probably the best known today is Chichen Itza. A lot of people visit it. They go down to the Yucatan. I forgot the name of the city that everybody goes to visit down there, but it's about 2 hours away from that. I think probably one of the most recognizable structures when people hear the word Maya is the pyramid of Kukulkan in Chichen Itza. It's also called El Castillo. It's a marvel of engineering. And a lot of people don't realize that it's a truncated pyramid. And where else do we see a truncated pyramid? On the back of the dollar bill, the Great Seal of the United States. It has two symbols, basically: the eagle holding the arrows and the olive branch in both of its hands in a God self icon pose. And on the other side of the Great Seal, we have the truncated pyramid. And this is something that I talk about extensively in the book that I won't talk about here. The idea of a truncated pyramid was inherited by the Freemasons, but it's something that we see all around the ancient world. And the pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza is a truncated pyramid. And at the top of the truncated pyramid, there's a anthropomorphic face with an awakened third eye dot on it. And in the book, I talk about my belief that on the back of the dollar bill, there's a truncated pyramid, and the eye in the triangle above the truncated pyramid is a symbol of the third eye. And in my earlier books, Written in Stone and The Missing Link, I go into extensive detail showing the evidence for that. A lot of people say, "No, that was the eye of God." Okay, that's fine. You can hold that view, but show me the evidence for it. I'll show you a tremendous amount of evidence that eye in the triangle is a symbol of the third eye. And what the third eye is, esoterically speaking, the third eye is an imaginary, or some would say spiritual eye that we have hidden in our forehead that can be awakened. And just as the two eyes see outward at material things, the middle eye, this third eye, when opened, looks inward at the spiritual soul. And the idea here is that, we're not just physical, material creatures that live and die on earth. We are actually spiritual beings. We have a soul. It's eternal. It's divine. And this is the whole concept of the third eye. When you awaken your third eye, you're able to see your inner soul. You're able to recognize your inner divinity and realize you're not just an animal living on a planet. You're actually an eternal being. And you make contact with that being. You commune with that being. And slowly you grow into that, which is who you really are. You stop identifying with your ego, bodily, animal self, and you start identifying with your eternal, divine, spiritual self. And this is the concept of the third eye, not just in modern Freemasonry, or in esoteric Freemasonry, I should say, but among all these ancient cultures. All of the cultures around the world, and I have this in my books also, I talk about this as one of the main themes in my book, is that all the ancient cultures around the world practiced this third eye religion. They knew they were not just material animals. They knew that there was some element in them that was much higher, an eternal element, a divine element. We call it the soul today. The Greeks called it the soul. The ancient Hindus called it the soul. It's really the same doctrine that we see all around the ancient world. I call it the universal religion. And that's what's inherited in esoteric Freemasonry. That's what we see in the symbolism of the cathedrals, the churches, the castles. That's what the pentagram is about. That's what all the modern Masons aren't really ready to hear. They kind of have the Bible, and we believe in God of the Bible, and he's the monotheistic deity, and he's outside of ourselves. And that's the big difference. That's the difference between religion and gnosis. Religion talks about a deity that is outside of ourselves. You could point your finger at that deity and say, him. And gnosis is something where you realize the divinity is not outside of you. It's inside you. It is who you are. And that's the big difference. And that's why I think the church had a big problem with the Freemasonries over the last several centuries, because the Freemasonries understood this idea of the divinity being within us all. And the church kind of had a different view, where they thought that monotheism, they thought God was above, God was outside of us. And a lot of people would say that the church did this to control the masses. And I quite readily agree with that, according to my research. I know a lot of your fans are religious, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but this is my research, and this is what I believe.
Hey, we're equal opportunity offenders here. We want the truth. And nothing but the truth, or as close as we can get to it. And these men had written this truth in stone that would last millennia, so that in the future, us now could properly decipher it and start to regain this knowledge and maybe move back to a golden age. Because as we open this show, we are not in an upswing here, folks. We are in an absolute decline spiritually, morally, and even architecturally. Nothing is built to last anymore.
I totally agree. I'm, very, very early on in my research, I became attracted to the Hindu concept of the yugas. We're talking about mid 90s here, 1990s. I started to learn about the yugas, and just as a very, very quick overview, the ancient Hindus believed, and they attached this belief to the precession of the equinoxes, the idea of precession, a 26,000 year cycle. They believe that civilization rises and falls during the course of this cycle. It starts off at a golden age. They call that the Satya Yuga. And then it falls a little bit down to the Treta Yuga, which is the Silver Age. And then the Vapara Yuga, which is the Bronze Age. And then the Kali Yuga, which is the Dark Age. And then it starts all over. It's a cycle, goes up and down, up and down. And according to this ancient Hindu belief, we started off in the golden age, but now we're at the other end of the cycle. We're in the dark age. And this is something that I really it hit me in the beginning. I started to believe it right away. But over the years, I've really seen, especially, it's 2 decades now. Even in the last 2 decades, I see a big deterioration in culture, in society in general, like you say, in architecture, in people's values and religion, in the way people conduct themselves in public and on social media. I really, even just in the past 5 years, I've seen a big downturn. Unfortunately, I'm sad to say it, because I don't want our children to grow up in a world like that. But it is true. I really see a big downturn. And so, not only that, but when you look at these ancient monuments around the world, it's incredible. The pyramids of Egypt, I could go on and on. I don't want to start listing them all. We all know the incredible structures that the ancients built. So if you compare those structures to modern buildings, there's no comparison. And not only that, but they encoded such rich spiritual and astronomical, and some would say wisdom into these buildings. And we're just beginning to decode this information. So the ancient cultures were very clearly much more sophisticated. In my opinion, they were much more sophisticated than we are today. And we see that in the ruins that they left behind, in their rich artifacts, in their philosophies, and their teachings and traditions. And if you compare that to what we have today, sure, we have technology, but I really believe technology is just masking the fact that we really are living in a dark age. And that's sad. And just as a quick aside, Plato talked about the idea of an Atlantis, which was a golden age culture. And I have a great quote here from Plato that I usually try to talk about. The reason Atlantis fell is because it was falling from the golden age down into a darker age. And he says, and I quote from Plato and Critias, but when he's talking about the Atlanteans here, he says, when the divine element in them became weakened and their human traits became predominant, they ceased to be able to carry their prosperity with moderation. And I think that's a great quote, because it's really explaining this whole Hindu concept of the golden age and falling down into the dark age. It's explaining that in ancient times there was a kind of universal religion during the golden age. And I think we see evidence of that in the parallel pyramids all around the world, and the parallel cobalt arches, elongated skulls, mummies, triptych temples, god self icons. There's so much evidence that shows that ancient cultures around the world, the Egyptians, the Hindus, the Chinese, Sumerians, Babylonians, Mesopotamians, Inca, pre-Inca culture, the Maya, Olmec, Aztec, etc., they really all had the same wisdom teaching, the same perennial philosophy. And that's really what we've inherited in Freemasonry. And that's really what true, authentic Freemasonry is all about. And last thing, it wasn't just the ancient Hindus that talked about this cycling of the ages, this golden age falling into the dark age. It was also known to the Greeks, the Romans, and other cultures, and even cultures in the Americas had it. The Greeks and Romans used the idea of metals of decreasing value, like the golden age fell to the silver age, the silver age would fall to the bronze age, and the bronze age would fall to the iron age. And those are equated with the Hindu yugas. The Satya yuga is the golden, the Treta yuga is the silver, the Dvapara yuga is the bronze, and the Kali yuga, our present age, is the iron age. So this is an example of how this ancient wisdom was really known to multiple ancient cultures, and it resonates with me in a big way. Not just because I see golden age when I look at ancient cultures, but I also see dark age when I see our modern society, which unfortunately just seems to be slipping further and further into the depths.
Without a doubt. And even the Bavarian Illuminati of Adam Weishaupt had this same belief going, and it was wrapped up in pentagrams and the symbols of 5. And they had the 5 stages of civilization, like Blumenkräfte, where you move into the ultimate bureaucracy of nightmare and down to the crushing blow of the end of civilization due to the rise of the ego and the loss of the spiritual divine self. Even the Illuminati folks had a 5-point star based on this very thought. So that is absolutely true. And then it's up to us, right? As we start to find our divine self once again, to what word can I use to have that resonate from our very being, and we start to gather together in our own mindset of free from this control, because there is an upswing as well. Everything that goes down goes up, back and forth. And it's up to us to finally liberate our souls into this system and allow ourselves to be human. One thing I definitely discovered with the Mayans was the camaraderie, the community that was there. They were all so poor and yet all so happy that they were willing to do anything to fulfill this ancestral belief and this necessary connection with their ancestors was what drove this whole situation to continue going. Richard, this has been an amazing talk so far. I can't wait to dig deeper into the members section and just pick your brain quite a bit. Everybody, you definitely want to get all of Richard's books to get this data, to understand how civilization has fallen and how it can rise again, and learn that these ancient structures are speaking of wisdom of a golden age that we can bring back to the surface with our understanding this knowledge. So make sure to get Written in Stone, The Missing Link, and his newest book, Mayan Masonry, to really dig deep into understanding how culture will bring up ourselves, how we are the true power in this system, and it's all coming from within as we begin to rediscover this third eye that sees within. Last statements on this hour before we jump over to the members section, Richard?
No, actually, I was just calling up. I have a good quote here from somebody that everybody says is the biggest Illuminati member on the planet, but we can learn from everybody, and I don't believe anybody is purely evil. I think that there's good and evil in all of us. But I have a good quote that I want to read from Prince Charles. Right. He talks about the idea of the golden age and the dark age. He talks about how he believes we've entered a dark age. And he also has some great advice for people. And it's not just Prince Charles, by the way. I mean, there are so many esoteric authors and occultists who believed in the idea that we are cycling from golden age to dark age and then back again. Manly Hall, Gurdjieff, Alan Watts, Hargrave Jennings, Harvey Spencer Lewis, Israel Regardie. There were so many who understood this doctrine. So it's something that really I think people should know, and it's a good way to approach ancient cultures, to look at them as our ancestors had much more knowledge than we do today, and we would do well to study what they knew. And that's what I do. That's all. We could talk about that in the next hour.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in here every week. The Free Zone is going because of you. I hope you will continue to share all the information that we gather here, and make sure to let everybody know about freemantv.com and get them all over here to dig deep, because this knowledge isn't presented everywhere, folks. It's very deep here. And I'm proud of that. I really am. So thank you all so much, and we will see you all next week.